The massive space station called Kepler Station floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal city. Ships of all sizes came and went from its many docking bays. The station was home to over 10 million beings from dozens of different alien species. It was the biggest trade hub in this part of the galaxy. Admiral Vex stood on the command deck of his flagship, looking out at the busy traffic around the station. He was a Zephyrian, which meant he had dark green scaly skin and 4 powerful arms. His species had controlled this region of space for over 2,000 years. They were proud warriors who had never lost a major battle. The Admiral was watching the daily reports when his communications officer called out to him. The officer was a young Zephyrian named Cole who had only been on duty for a few months. "Admiral, we have an unknown ship approaching our space," Cole said. His voice sounded nervous. "Unknown ship?" Admiral Vex turned around. "What species?" "That's the strange part, sir. They say they are humans." Admiral Vex had heard that word before, but only in passing. Humans were supposed to be a new species that had recently started traveling between the stars. Most aliens thought they were primitive and backward. "Just one ship?" the Admiral asked. "Yes, sir." "A single vessel?" Admiral Vex laughed. "One ship from a species we barely know about? What could they possibly want?" The communications officer looked at his screen. "They are requesting permission to pass through our territory peacefully. The message says it's from Captain Jake Morrison of a vessel called Liberty's Edge." "Captain Jake Morrison," Admiral Vex repeated the strange name. "These human names are so odd." "Very well, let me hear their message." The main screen in front of the command deck flickered to life. A man appeared on the screen. He looked to be in his 40s, with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform that looked nothing like the elaborate military dress of other species. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Liberty's Edge," the man said. His voice was steady and polite. "We are requesting peaceful passage through your territory. We come in peace and wish only to continue our exploration mission." Admiral Vex studied the human's face. The creature looked so plain and unremarkable. Its skin was a pale pink color, and it had only 2 arms and 2 eyes. How could such a weak-looking being command a starship? "Communications, open a channel," Admiral Vex ordered. "Channel open, sir." "Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Vex of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet. You are entering restricted space. State your intentions." "Admiral Vex, we appreciate your time," Captain Morrison replied. "We are on a peaceful exploration mission. We would like to visit Kepler Station to trade for supplies and meet new species. We have no weapons targeted at anyone and mean no harm." "One ship," Admiral Vex muttered to himself. He looked around the command deck at his officers. They all seemed amused by the situation. "Captain Morrison, are you aware that this region is protected by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy?" "We are aware of your impressive reputation, Admiral," Captain Morrison said. "We respect your authority here. We only ask for safe passage." Admiral Vex felt insulted by the human's calm tone. Did this primitive creature not understand who he was dealing with? The Zephyrian fleet had over 200 warships stationed around Kepler Station. Each ship was armed with plasma cannons that could destroy a planet. "How many ships do your people have, Captain?" Admiral Vex asked. "I'm sorry, Admiral, but I'm not authorized to discuss our fleet details," Captain Morrison replied. "What I can tell you is that we come in peace." This answer annoyed Admiral Vex even more. "You're not authorized? Who do you think you're talking to?" "I command the greatest military force in this sector." "I understand, Admiral. I mean no disrespect. I'm simply following my orders." Admiral Vex turned to his tactical officer. "Show me their ship." The screen changed to show the Liberty's Edge. It was a medium-sized vessel, about the same size as a Zephyrian light cruiser. The ship looked simple and plain. Its hull was gray metal with no decorations or fancy designs. It didn't look threatening at all. "That's their ship?" Admiral Vex asked. It looks like a cargo transport. Scans show it has basic shields and engines, the tactical officer reported. Nothing impressive. We could destroy it easily if needed. Admiral Vex looked back at Captain Morrison on the screen. Very well, Captain. You may proceed to Kepler Station. But you will be escorted by our ships. Do not deviate from the course we give you. Thank you, Admiral. We appreciate your hospitality. The channel closed, and Admiral Vex shook his head. Humans, he said to his officers. Another weak species looking for protection from stronger powers. Send 3 light cruisers to escort them. Make sure they understand their place. As the Admiral gave his orders, he felt confident and superior. His species had dealt with many new races over the centuries. They all followed the same pattern. First came 1 or 2 ships asking for permission to trade. Then they would beg for protection from pirates or other threats. Eventually, they would become tributaries, paying the Zephyrians for safety. The humans would be no different. Admiral Vex was sure of it. On Kepler Station, word spread quickly about the arrival of a human ship. Most aliens had never seen a human before. Some were curious, others were indifferent. A few scholars who studied new species were excited to learn about these newcomers. Ambassador Lyra was one of the excited ones. She was an Altarian, a species known for their diplomatic skills and love of learning. Altarians looked like tall, thin beings made of living crystal. They sparkled in the light and could change colors based on their emotions. A new species, she said to her assistant. How wonderful. I must arrange to meet with them. Are you sure that's wise, Ambassador? Her assistant asked. Admiral Vex seems to think they're just another primitive race. Admiral Vex thinks every new species is primitive, Ambassador Lyra replied. But first contact is always important. You never know what you might learn. As the Liberty's Edge moved slowly toward Kepler Station, escorted by 3 Zephyrian warships, nobody realized that this simple meeting would change everything. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humans. Something that would make everyone question what they thought they knew about this quiet species from the edge of space. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair, looking calm and relaxed. He had no idea that his simple request for passage was already causing discussions throughout the station. He was just doing his job, following his mission to make peaceful contact with new alien species. But the galaxy was about to discover that humans were not what they seemed. Ambassador Lyra stood in the docking bay of Kepler Station, waiting for the human ship to arrive. She had changed her crystal body to a calm blue color, which showed she was peaceful and ready to learn. Her assistant, a nervous young Altarian named Zik, stood beside her with a tablet full of first contact procedures. Remember, Ambassador, Zik said, we know very little about humans. They might have strange customs or dangerous diseases. That's exactly why this is so exciting, Ambassador Lyra replied. Her crystal skin sparkled with silver flecks, showing her curiosity. Every new species teaches us something about the universe. The Liberty's Edge slowly entered the docking bay. Ambassador Lyra was surprised by how quiet the ship was. Most alien vessels made lots of noise with their engines and systems. But the human ship moved almost silently, like it was floating on air. The ship itself looked even more plain up close. The gray metal hull had no decorations or symbols. There were no bright lights or colorful markings that most species used to show their culture. It looked like a simple work ship, not a vessel for exploring the galaxy. It's so boring, Zik whispered. Don't judge by appearances, Ambassador Lyra said. Some of the most interesting species have the simplest ships. After the ship landed, a door opened in its side. A ramp extended down to the docking bay floor. Ambassador Lyra expected to see strange alien technology or unusual equipment. Instead, the inside of the ship looked surprisingly normal. A man walked down the ramp. This was obviously Captain Jake Morrison. He was tall but not too tall, with brown hair and blue eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform that looked clean and neat. Behind him came 3 other humans. Welcome to Kepler Station, Ambassador Lyra said. She had studied human languages and could speak their English words. "I am Ambassador Lyra of the Altarian Diplomatic Corps." Captain Morrison smiled. It was a warm, friendly expression that made Ambassador Lyra feel comfortable. "Thank you, Ambassador. I'm Captain Jake Morrison. This is my pilot, Amy Carter, my engineer, Pete Johnson, and my security chief, Lisa Brooks." Ambassador Lyra looked at each human. Amy Carter was a young woman with red hair and green eyes. She looked alert and smart. Pete Johnson was an older man with gray hair and strong hands that showed he worked with machines. Lisa Brooks was a serious-looking woman with dark hair and careful eyes that seemed to notice everything. "We're honored to meet you," Captain Morrison continued. "We've heard wonderful things about Altarian diplomacy. You know about our people?" Ambassador Lyra was surprised. "We try to learn about everyone we might meet," Amy Carter said. "It seems polite." Ambassador Lyra felt impressed. Most new species knew nothing about the galaxy when they first arrived. They usually spent weeks just learning who was who. But these humans had done their homework. "Would you like to tour our ship?" Captain Morrison asked. "We'd be happy to show you around." "That would be wonderful," Ambassador Lyra said. As they walked up the ramp into the Liberty's Edge, Ambassador Lyra noticed something strange. The ship felt different inside than it looked outside. The corridors were wider than they seemed from the outside. The walls had a soft glow that didn't come from any lights she could see. "Your ship is bigger inside than it appears," she said. "Oh, that's just efficient design," Pete Johnson said. "We humans are pretty good at making the most of small spaces." They passed through several corridors lined with doors. Ambassador Lyra could hear the quiet hum of machinery, but it sounded different from any engines she knew. It was smoother and more controlled. "What kind of engines do you use?" she asked. "Nothing fancy," Pete Johnson replied. "Just basic propulsion systems." But Ambassador Lyra had studied ships for many years. The sound she was hearing didn't match any basic engines she knew about. It sounded more advanced than anything the Altarians had built. They reached what Captain Morrison called the bridge. Ambassador Lyra expected to see a complex control room with lots of screens and buttons. Instead, she found a calm, quiet space with just a few stations. The humans seemed to control their ship with very little visible technology. "Where are all your controls?" she asked. "We like to keep things simple," Amy Carter said from the pilot's seat. "Too many buttons can be confusing." Ambassador Lyra looked around the bridge. She could sense technology everywhere, but she couldn't see it. The walls themselves seemed to be alive with hidden systems. When Amy Carter touched what looked like a plane panel, multiple screens appeared in the air above her hands. "Holographic displays," Ambassador Lyra said. "That's very advanced technology." "Is it?" Lisa Brooks asked. "We thought everyone used these." Ambassador Lyra felt confused. Holographic controls were cutting-edge technology that only the most advanced species had mastered. But these humans talked about them like they were ordinary tools. "Tell me about your people," Ambassador Lyra said. "How long have you been traveling between the stars?" "Not too long," Captain Morrison said. "We've been exploring for about 50 years now." 50 years is very recent," Ambassador Lyra said. "Most species take centuries to develop star travel." "We had some advantages," Pete Johnson said. "Our people have always been good at solving problems." As they continued the tour, Ambassador Lyra noticed more strange things. The ship's walls were made of materials she didn't recognize. The lights had no visible source but provided perfect illumination everywhere. The air felt clean and fresh, but she couldn't see any air recycling systems. In what the humans called the engineering section, Pete Johnson showed her around with obvious pride. "This is where we keep the heart of the ship," he said. Ambassador Lyra looked at the engines. They were unlike anything she had ever seen. They were compact and elegant, with smooth surfaces that seemed to glow with inner light. She could feel enormous power contained within them, but they ran so quietly she could barely hear them. "What fuel do you use?" she asked. "Oh, we've moved beyond chemical fuels," Pete Johnson said casually. These run on something more efficient. More efficient than what? Than the old engines we used to use. Ambassador Lyra realized that Pete Johnson wasn't really answering her questions. He was being polite but evasive. The humans were hiding something about their technology. During lunch in the ship's dining area, Ambassador Lyra tried a different approach. What is Earth like? She asked. Beautiful, Amy Carter said. Lots of blue oceans and green forests. We have about 8 billion people living there. 8 billion? Ambassador Lyra was shocked. Most species had much smaller populations when they first reached the stars. That's a very large population for a young spacefaring race. We've been around for a while, Captain Morrison said. We just haven't traveled very far until recently. What changed? Why did you decide to explore now? The four humans looked at each other. Ambassador Lyra could sense some kind of silent communication between them. We decided it was time to meet our neighbors, Lisa Brooks finally said. Ambassador Lyra felt certain there was more to the story. These humans were friendly and polite, but they were definitely not telling her everything. Their ship was far more advanced than they claimed. Their technology was more sophisticated than most species achieved after centuries of development. Ambassador, Captain Morrison said, we'd like to visit your station and meet more species. Is that possible? Of course, Ambassador Lyra said. I'll arrange meetings with representatives from several species. They'll be very interested to meet you. As Ambassador Lyra prepared to leave the Liberty's Edge, she felt more confused than when she had arrived. The humans seemed genuine in their desire for peaceful contact. But there were too many mysteries about them. Their ship was too advanced. Their technology was too sophisticated. Their population was too large. And they were too calm and confident for a species that was supposedly new to galactic politics. Ambassador Lyra had met many species during her diplomatic career. She had learned to recognize when people were hiding something important. And these humans were definitely hiding something very big. Admiral Vex sat in his command chair, reading Ambassador Lyra's report about the humans. The more he read, the more annoyed he became. The ambassador was clearly overthinking things. She saw mysteries where there were none and advanced technology where there was probably just alien trickery. Sir, his tactical officer said, the human ship has requested permission to leave the station. Already? Admiral Vex looked up from the report. They've only been here for 2 days. Yes, sir. Captain Morrison says they've completed their mission and want to continue exploring. Admiral Vex felt insulted. Most new species spent weeks at Kepler Station, begging for trade agreements and protection deals. They understood that the Zephyrians were the real power in this region. But these humans acted like they were just tourists passing through. What course are they planning to take? They want to travel to the Draco system, sir. That would take them through the neutral zone. Admiral Vex's 4 hands clenched into fists. The neutral zone was a sensitive area where several species had competing claims. It was also where the Zephyrians tested new races to see how they reacted to pressure. Perfect, Admiral Vex said. It's time these humans learned their place in the galaxy. He turned to his communications officer. Send orders to Captains Rock, Voss, and Tyr. They are to intercept the human ship and escort it to the patrol station in the neutral zone for inspection. Yes, sir. Should I tell them what they're looking for? Tell them to find any excuse to delay the humans. Search their ship. Question their crew. Make them understand that they need our permission to travel through our space. Admiral Vex smiled with satisfaction. This was how things worked in the real galaxy. New species needed to be taught respect for established powers. The humans would soon learn that their single ship meant nothing compared to Zephyrian military might. 2 hours later, the Liberty's Edge left Kepler Station. Captain Jake Morrison sat on his bridge, reviewing the star charts for their next destination. Amy Carter was piloting the ship while Pete Johnson monitored the engines. Lisa Brooks watched the sensor displays. Nice people, Amy said. That ambassador was really smart. Yeah, she asked a lot of good questions, Pete replied. I think she suspected we weren't telling her everything. Can you blame her? Lisa said. We were pretty vague about our technology. Captain Morrison nodded. Orders are orders. Earth wants us to make peaceful contact, but we're not supposed to reveal our capabilities yet. Speaking of capabilities, Lisa said, I'm picking up 3 ships approaching. They're big ones. Captain Morrison looked at his display. 3 Zephyrian heavy cruisers were moving toward them at high speed. Each ship was twice the size of the Liberty's Edge and heavily armed. Incoming message, Amy announced. The main screen showed a Zephyrian captain with dark green scales and angry red eyes. Human vessel, this is Captain Rock of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet. You are ordered to stop for inspection. Captain Rock, Jake replied calmly, we have clearance from Admiral Vex to pass through this area. Is there a problem? There are security concerns in the neutral zone. You will accompany us to Patrol Station 7 for a full inspection of your ship and crew. Captain Morrison looked at his crew. Amy Carter shrugged. Pete Johnson looked amused. Lisa Brooks just waited for orders. Captain Rock, we appreciate your concern for security, Jake said. But we're on a tight schedule. We need to reach the Draco system within the week. Your schedule is not my concern, Captain Rock snapped. You will comply with my orders or face the consequences. The 3 Zephyrian ships moved into formation around the Liberty's Edge. Captain Morrison could see their weapons were powered up and ready to fire. This was clearly a test of some kind. Well, Jake said quietly to his crew, what do you think? They want to play games, Lisa said. Show us they're in charge. Pretty standard behavior for a dominant species, Amy added. We've seen this before. The question is, Pete said, do we want to go along with it? Captain Morrison thought for a moment. His orders were to make peaceful contact and avoid conflicts. But he also had orders not to let foreign powers board his ship or compromise Earth's security. Captain Rock, he said finally, I'm afraid we can't allow an inspection of our vessel. We have sensitive materials on board. Then you will be escorted to the patrol station whether you cooperate or not. The Zephyrian ships began to move closer, trying to box in the Liberty's Edge. Captain Morrison could see that they expected him to surrender immediately. After all, what could one small ship do against 3 heavy cruisers? Amy, Captain Morrison said quietly, are you ready? Always, sir. Pete, how are our engines? Running at about 5% power, sir. More than enough for what we need. Lisa, defensive systems. Standing by, sir. Captain Morrison looked at the Zephyrian ships surrounding them. The alien captains probably thought they had won already. They were about to learn something new about humans. Captain Rock, this is your final warning. We cannot allow you to board our ship. Please stand down. You are in no position to make demands, human. Surrender now. I'm sorry you feel that way, Captain Morrison said. Then he turned to his crew. Amy, take us out of here. Standard departure speed. Yes, sir. Amy Carter touched her control panel. Instantly, the Liberty's Edge shot forward like it had been fired from a cannon. The ship accelerated so fast that the Zephyrian crews didn't have time to react. On Captain Rock's bridge, alarms started ringing everywhere. His navigation officer stared at his screens in disbelief. Sir, the human ship just accelerated to 0.7 light speed in under 3 seconds. That's impossible. Captain Rock shouted. No ship can accelerate that fast. Sir, they're pulling away from us at incredible speed. Our engines can't match their acceleration. Captain Rock watched helplessly as the Liberty's Edge disappeared into the distance. His 3 powerful warships, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, had been left behind like they were standing still. Get me Admiral Vex immediately. Meanwhile, on the Liberty's Edge, the crew was relaxed and calm. The amazing acceleration that had shocked the Zephyrians felt perfectly normal to them. That was fun, Amy said. I haven't opened up the engines in weeks. You barely opened them at all, Pete laughed. That was maybe 10% power. Did we hurt their feelings? Lisa asked. Probably, Captain Morrison said. But sometimes you have to be clear about boundaries. Back on Captain Rock's ship, Admiral Vex's angry face filled the main screen. What do you mean they escaped? Sir, their ship is faster than anything we've ever seen. They accelerated beyond our ability to follow. One ship, Captain. One small ship. And you let it escape? Admiral, with respect, that wasn't a normal ship. No known technology can produce that kind of acceleration. Admiral Vex stared at his subordinate. For the first time since the humans arrived, he felt a cold feeling in his stomach. What if Ambassador Lyra had been right? What if there was more to these humans than met the eye? Return to base immediately, he ordered. I want a full analysis of what happened. As the three Zephyrian ships turned back toward Kepler Station, their crews were quiet and confused. They had just been outmaneuvered by a single ship from a species they thought was primitive. And somewhere in space, the Liberty's Edge continued on its peaceful mission, leaving behind the first hint that humans might not be what they seemed. Admiral Vex paced back and forth in his private office, his forearms moving nervously. He couldn't stop thinking about Captain Rock's report. A single human ship had outrun 3 of his best cruisers like they were children's toys. Something was very wrong. Commander Thek, he called to his intelligence officer. I want you to search the galactic database for everything we have on humans. Everything. Commander Thek was a thin Zephyrian with yellow eyes and sharp claws that were perfect for working with computers. He was the best intelligence officer in the fleet, known for finding information that others missed. Sir, I already did a basic search when they first arrived. There wasn't much information. Then dig deeper, Admiral Vex ordered. Search the restricted files. Search the military archives. Search the old exploration reports. I want to know everything about these creatures. Commander Thek nodded and left for the intelligence center. Admiral Vex continued pacing, feeling more worried with each passing minute. In his long military career, he had never seen a ship move like the Liberty's Edge had moved. The acceleration was impossible according to everything he knew about physics. 2 hours later, Commander Thek returned. His yellow eyes were wide with shock, and his scales had turned pale green, which meant he was frightened. Admiral, he said quietly, you need to see this. They walked together to the intelligence center, a secure room filled with computers and data screens. Commander Thek sat down at his workstation and began pulling up files. I started with the basic database, he explained. Like I said, there wasn't much. Just some notes about humans being a new species from a system called Sol. But then I remembered something. What? About 30 years ago, there were some strange reports from our deep space scouts. Ships that appeared and disappeared quickly. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Most of the reports were dismissed as equipment errors. Commander Thek pulled up a file marked, Classified, Scout Reports. Look at this, he said, pointing to the screen. Scout Ship Valor reported contact with an unknown vessel near the edge of our territory. The ship accelerated beyond anything they had ever seen and vanished before they could get a clear scan. Admiral Vex leaned forward. When was this? 28 years ago. And there are more. Commander Thek scrolled through several files. Scout Ship Thunder reported a similar contact. So did the Deep Space Explorer mech. All reported the same thing, ships that could accelerate impossibly fast. Did anyone try to investigate? Yes, sir. That's where it gets interesting. Commander Thek opened another file. Admiral Korvex sent a full squadron to investigate one of these sightings. They found nothing, but they did detect some strange radiation signatures. Admiral Vex studied the data. The radiation patterns looked like the aftermath of some kind of advanced engine system, but nothing he recognized. Keep searching, he ordered. Commander Thek's claws clicked rapidly over his keyboard. Here's something from the Altarian archives. They have reports of unknown ships appearing near their colonies about 15 years ago. The ships were described as gray and unremarkable, but with impossible speed and maneuverability. Gray and unremarkable, Admiral Vex repeated. That sounds like the Liberty's Edge. There's more, sir. The Drakmari military has classified reports of encounters with ships they couldn't identify or catch. The Helix Federation has similar reports. Even the Voidwalkers mention strange ships in their territorial logs. Admiral Vex felt his stomach sink. Are you telling me that humans have been in our space for decades, and nobody realized it? It looks that way, sir. But there's something else. Commander Thek's voice became even quieter. I found references to these ships in the oldest archives. Some of the reports go back 60 years. 60 years? But humans only achieved star travel 50 years ago. At least, that's what Captain Morrison told Ambassador Lyra. Sir, I think Captain Morrison wasn't telling the whole truth. Commander Thek pulled up a new set of files. These were marked with the highest security classifications. I had to use my emergency access codes to get these files. They're from the Galactic Intelligence Network. The files appeared on the screen, and Admiral Vex read them with growing horror. The reports described a species that had been observed for over a century. A species that seemed to have technology far beyond what anyone else possessed. A species that had been watching the galaxy while staying hidden. According to these reports, Commander Thek said, humans have been sending scout ships throughout the galaxy for at least 100 years. They've been studying us while we thought they didn't exist. That's impossible. A species doesn't develop that kind of technology overnight. Sir, there's something else. Something much worse. Commander Thek's claws trembled as he opened another file. This is from the deepest archives, marked Existential Threat Assessment. The new file contained information that made Admiral Vex's blood run cold. It described human history as far as galactic intelligence could determine. And it was terrifying. According to this analysis, Commander Thek read, humans spent over 3 centuries fighting wars among themselves. The file calls them the Resource Wars. During this time, they developed weapons and technology that make our current military capabilities look primitive. Admiral Vex sat down heavily. 3 centuries of war? The file estimates that during these wars, humans lost over 2 billion of their population. But the survivors became incredibly advanced in military technology. They learned to build ships that could survive anything and weapons that could destroy entire fleets. What kind of weapons? Commander Thek scrolled through the technical data. The file mentions something called antimatter weapons. Plasma cannons that can cut through any known armor. Shields that can absorb the energy of a star. And engines that use controlled nuclear fusion for propulsion. Admiral Vex stared at the screen. Nuclear fusion engines would explain the impossible acceleration of the Liberty's Edge. Antimatter weapons would explain why humans felt confident sending single ships into unknown territory. How reliable is this information? It comes from multiple sources, sir. Deep space observers, intercepted communications, analysis of debris from unknown ship encounters. The intelligence analysts rate it as highly probable. Admiral Vex stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of Kepler Station and the mighty Zephyrian fleet that protected it. 200 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering. The pride of a species that had ruled this region for 2,000 years. And apparently, it was all useless against a single human ship. Commander, he said quietly, if this information is accurate, why are the humans being peaceful? Why send just one ship? Why not conquer us all? Commander Thek looked at the files again. The psychological profile suggests that humans prefer peace after their long wars. The file says they learned that conquest is expensive and destructive. They would rather trade and explore than fight. But they could fight if they wanted to. Sir, according to this data, humans could probably destroy our entire fleet without losing a single ship. Admiral Vex felt the room spinning around him. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had just changed. The humans weren't a weak new species looking for protection. They were possibly the most powerful military force anyone had ever encountered. And they had been watching everyone for over a century. Commander Thek, Admiral Vex said slowly, send a priority message to all fleet commanders. Tell them that no one, absolutely no one, is to take any hostile action against human ships without my direct authorization. Yes, sir. And Commander? Lock down these files. Nobody else sees this information until I decide what to do with it. As Commander Thek secured the classified data, Admiral Vex continued staring out the window. Somewhere out there, the Liberty's Edge was continuing its peaceful mission. Captain Morrison and his crew probably had no idea that they had just revealed the truth about their species. The galaxy had a new dominant power. And most people didn't even know it yet. Commander Thek couldn't sleep. The classified files about humans kept running through his mind. He had spent the entire night in the Intelligence Center, digging deeper into the galactic archives. What he found made the situation even more frightening. At dawn, he rushed to Admiral Vex's office. The Admiral was already awake, standing at his window and staring out at space. Sir, I found something else. Something much worse. Admiral Vex turned around. His eyes were tired, and his scales had a grayish color that showed he was stressed. How could it be worse than what we already discovered? Sir, I don't think the Liberty's Edge is alone. Admiral Vex sat down quickly. What do you mean? Commander Thek placed a data pad on the Admiral's desk. I spent all night analyzing the scout reports. The pattern of sightings doesn't match a single ship exploring randomly. It matches a coordinated survey mission. Coordinated by whom? By a fleet, sir. The sightings are too spread out and too well timed to be one ship. I estimate there are at least 50 human ships currently operating in our region of space. Admiral Vex picked up the data pad and studied the information. Red dots showed confirmed human ship sightings over the past 30 years. The dots formed a pattern that covered thousands of light years. 50 ships, he whispered. That's a conservative estimate, sir. There could be many more that we never detected. Admiral Vex looked at the pattern again. It was clearly the work of an organized exploration fleet. The humans had been systematically mapping and studying the entire region while everyone thought they were a new species. But Captain Morrison said his ship was on an exploration mission. He made it sound like first contact. I think Captain Morrison was being very careful with his words, sir. The Liberty's Edge might be making first contact, but humans have been observing us for decades. A communication alert interrupted their conversation. The face of Ambassador Lyra appeared on the Admiral's screen. Admiral Vex, I need to speak with you immediately. It's about the humans. Ambassador, we're rather busy at the moment. Admiral, I've been analyzing my interactions with the human crew. There are things about their ship that don't make sense. Admiral Vex looked at Commander Thek, who nodded. Very well, Ambassador. Please come to my office. 20 minutes later, Ambassador Lyra arrived. Her crystal body was bright yellow, which meant she was excited and concerned at the same time. Admiral, I've been thinking about the Liberty's Edge. The technology one saw doesn't match what they told me. What do you mean? They claimed their engines were basic propulsion systems. But the energy signatures I detected were unlike anything I've seen. They have fusion reactors, Admiral. Multiple fusion reactors. Commander Thek leaned forward. Are you certain? Absolutely. And that's not all. Their computer systems use quantum processing. Their hull is made of materials that I couldn't identify. And their shields. Ambassador Lyra paused. Their shields were operating at a level that should require a ship 10 times larger. Admiral Vex felt his stomach sink even further. What are you saying, Ambassador? I'm saying that the Liberty's Edge isn't an exploration ship. It's a warship disguised as an exploration ship. The room was quiet for a long moment. Admiral Vex looked at the data pad showing 50 human ships spread across their territory. If the Liberty's Edge was a warship, what were the other 49 ships? There's something else, Ambassador Lyra continued. I was talking with Pete Johnson, their engineer. He mentioned something casually that I didn't understand at the time. What did he say? He said the Liberty's Edge was converted from its original purpose. When I asked what that purpose was, he said it used to be a patrol boat. A patrol boat? Commander Thek asked. Those were his exact words. Then he laughed and said they were all retired veterans looking for something peaceful to do. Admiral Vex stood up and began pacing again. Veterans. They're all veterans. Of what war? Ambassador Lyra asked. Captain Morrison said humans have been peaceful for 50 years. Commander Thek looked at his classified files. Not quite peaceful, Ambassador. According to our intelligence, humans fought among themselves for 3 centuries. The wars only ended about 60 years ago. Civil wars, Admiral Vex said slowly. They fought each other with advanced weapons for 300 years. The survivors would be the most experienced warriors in the galaxy. And now they're exploring space in converted warships, Ambassador Lyra added. The full picture was becoming clear. Humans weren't a new species at all. They were an ancient, battle-hardened civilization that had learned to survive centuries of warfare. They had technology that made everyone else look primitive. And they had been watching the galaxy for decades while preparing for first contact. Admiral, Commander Thek said quietly, there's one more thing. I found a reference in the deepest archives to something called the Soul Defense Fleet. What about it? The file estimates that humans have over 10,000 warships in their home system alone. Ambassador Lyra's crystal body turned pale blue, which meant she was shocked. 10,000 ships? The file might be wrong, Commander Thek said hopefully. But if it's even close to accurate. Admiral Vex sat down again. 10,000 ships. Even if the estimate was off by 90%, that would still be 1,000 ships. The entire Zephyrian defense fleet had only 200 ships. Admiral, Ambassador Lyra said, I think we need to reconsider our approach to humans. What do you mean? I mean we've been treating them like a weak new species that needs our guidance. But they might be the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Admiral Vex looked out his window at the Zephyrian fleet. His ships suddenly looked very small and fragile. Commander Thek, send a message to all fleet commanders. Any ship that encounters humans is to offer full cooperation and assistance. No challenges, no tests, no shows of force. Yes, sir. And Commander? Start preparing a full diplomatic package. Trade agreements, non-aggression pacts, cultural exchange programs. Everything. Sir, shouldn't we inform the other species about what we've discovered? Admiral Vex thought about that. The Drakmari were proud warriors who might do something foolish. The Helix Federation was suspicious of everyone. The Voidwalkers were unpredictable at the best of times. Not yet, he decided. Let's see how the humans respond to our peaceful approach first. Meanwhile, aboard the Liberty's Edge, Captain Morrison was having a video call with Earth. The face of Admiral Sarah Stone appeared on his screen. She was the commander of the Soul Defense Fleet and Captain Morrison's superior officer. Report, Captain. First contact went well, Admiral. The aliens are curious but friendly. No major problems. Any signs that they know our true capabilities? Some suspicion from their ambassador, but nothing serious. I think we can maintain the peaceful explorer cover for now. Good. Continue your mission. The other survey ships are reporting similar results. It looks like the galaxy is ready for open contact. Admiral, there was one incident. The local military tried to force us to submit to inspection. We had to demonstrate our speed to get away. Admiral Stone frowned. How much speed? About 10% power. Just enough to outrun their escorts. That should be fine. We don't want to reveal too much too quickly. After the call ended, Captain Morrison returned to his duties. He had no idea that his simple demonstration of speed had started a chain reaction of discovery throughout the Zephyrian intelligence network. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not what they seemed. And Admiral Vex was about to face the most difficult decision of his career. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in recorded history. Representatives from 12 major species had gathered at the neutral meeting station called Harmony Point. The station orbited a peaceful star in space that belonged to no one, making it the perfect place for important discussions. Admiral Vex sat at the large circular table, feeling the weight of what he was about to reveal. Around him sat the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. There was General Cross of the warrior Drachmarie, his red skin and battle scars making him look dangerous even in a peaceful setting. Ambassador Prime Zeta represented the Technological Helix Federation, her mechanical body glowing with blue lights. The mysterious Voidwalker delegates sat in shadow, as was their custom. Fellow delegates, Admiral Vex began, his 4 hands clasped in front of him. I have called this emergency session because we have discovered something that affects us all. Get on with it, Zephyrian, General Cross growled. My fleets have battles to fight. This is about a new species that has made contact with several of our civilizations. They call themselves humans. Ambassador Prime Zeta's mechanical voice clicked and hummed. We are aware of humans. They visited our territory last month. Single ship, peaceful intentions. Nothing remarkable. That's where you're wrong, Admiral Vex said. He activated the holographic display in the center of the table. Images appeared showing the Liberty's Edge and other human ships. These beings are not what they appear to be. For the next hour, Admiral Vex shared everything that Commander Thek had discovered. The classified files, the scout reports, the evidence of human technology. As he spoke, the faces around the table changed from bored to interested to shocked to frightened. You're saying they've been watching us for a century? Asked Prime Minister Velen of the peaceful Altarian Republic. At least a century, Admiral Vex confirmed. And their technology is far beyond what any of us possess. General Cross slammed his fist on the table. Impossible. The Drachmarie have fought every species in this galaxy. No one has weapons we cannot match. General, with respect, I don't think you've fought humans yet. The Voidwalker delegate spoke for the first time, her voice echoing strangely. We have encountered their ships. They move like shadows, appearing and disappearing without warning. We thought they were spirits. Not spirits, Admiral Vex said. Advanced technology. Technology that makes our best ships look like toys. Ambassador Prime Zeta processed this information quickly. If humans have been observing us, why reveal themselves now? What has changed? That's what worries me, Admiral Vex replied. Either they've decided we're ready for contact, or they've decided we're a threat. The discussion continued for hours. Each species shared their encounters with human ships. The pattern was always the same, single vessels that appeared suddenly, observed quietly, and disappeared before anyone could get close enough for detailed scans. We need to decide how to respond, Prime Minister Velen said. Do we treat them as friends or enemies? They haven't shown any hostile intentions, Admiral Vex pointed out. Every contact has been peaceful. So far, General Cross said darkly. But a species with that kind of power could turn hostile at any moment. I say we prepare for war. With what? Admiral Vex asked. General, if my intelligence is correct, humans could destroy all our fleets combined without losing a single ship. Then what do you suggest? Diplomacy. Trade. Friendship. Anything except hostility. As the debate continued, none of the delegates noticed that their communication systems were being monitored. High above the meeting station, a small human ship watched and listened. The ship was almost invisible, using technology that bent light around its hull. Inside the ship, Lieutenant Commander Nancy Webb recorded everything. She was part of the Sol Intelligence Service, and her job was to monitor alien communications and activities. Control, this is Shadow 7, she spoke into her communication system. The aliens have figured out we're not primitives. They're having an emergency meeting about us right now. The response came from Admiral Stone back on Earth. How much do they know? Quite a bit. The Zephyrians found our old scout reports and classified files. They know we've been watching them for decades. What's their response? Nancy listened to the argument happening in the meeting station below. Mixed. Some want to be friendly. Others want to prepare for war. The Zephyrian admiral is pushing for peaceful contact. Any immediate threats? Not yet. But the Drakmari general is talking about mobilizing their fleets. He seems to think they can fight us. Poor bastard has no idea what he'd be up against. Continue monitoring and report any changes. Back in the meeting station, the delegates had reached a decision. They would send a joint message to Earth, requesting formal diplomatic contact. The message would be carried by a special ambassador chosen from among the most skilled diplomats in the galaxy. I volunteer, Ambassador Lyra said. I've already met with the humans. They seem to trust me. Agreed, Admiral Vex said. You'll carry our official response to their contact. What none of them knew was that Captain Morrison was already aware of their decision. The Liberty's Edge had been monitoring their communications since the meeting began. His orders were to make peaceful contact, but he was also prepared for other possibilities. Captain, Amy Carter said from the pilot station, we're receiving a priority message from Earth. Captain Morrison read the message on his personal screen. It was from Admiral Stone, informing him about the alien meeting and their decision to send an ambassador to Earth. Well, he said to his crew, it looks like our cover is blown. Did we do something wrong? Pete Johnson asked. No, they just figured out we're not primitives. The Zephyrians did some detective work and found our old intelligence files. Lisa Brooks looked up from her security station. Are they hostile? Doesn't look like it. They want to send an ambassador to Earth for formal contact. That's good, right? Amy asked. Depends on what Earth decides to do. If the Admiral approves, we might be seeing the beginning of real galactic relations. If not. Captain Morrison didn't finish the sentence. The truth was that Earth had been preparing for this moment for decades. The Sol Defense Fleet had been built specifically to protect humanity if first contact went wrong. 10,000 ships waited in Earth's solar system, ready to defend their home if necessary. But Admiral Stone and the Earth government preferred peace. Humanity had learned the cost of war during their centuries of conflict. They would rather trade and explore than fight. Captain, Pete Johnson said, what if they ask us about our real capabilities? Then we'll tell them the truth. Earth has decided that honesty is the best policy for long-term relations. As the Liberty's Edge continued its mission, the galaxy began to change. Messages flew between star systems as the news about humans spread. Some species panicked and began mobilizing their fleets. Others saw opportunities for trade and alliance. But one thing was clear to everyone, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. Humans were no longer the unknown newcomers from the edge of space. They were possibly the most powerful species anyone had ever encountered. And they were still sending out single ships on peaceful missions, as if they had nothing to fear from anyone. That confidence was perhaps the most frightening thing of all. The largest military fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of the Kepler system. Over 500 warships from 12 different species formed a massive wall of metal and weapons that stretched across space for thousands of kilometers. Each ship bristled with plasma cannons, missile launchers, and energy shields. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Conquest, and tried to feel confident. Around him floated the pride of multiple civilizations. Zephyrian heavy cruisers with their four-armed crews. Drakmari battle carriers loaded with fighter squadrons. Helix Federation ships that looked like flying cities. Even the mysterious Voidwalkers had sent their shadow vessels. Admiral, General Cross said from his own ship, "Are you certain this is necessary? We could simply order the humans to leave our space." "General, did you read the intelligence files? These humans have technology we can barely understand. A single one of their ships outran 3 of my best cruisers like they were standing still. Then why are we only seeing one ship at a time?" That was the question that kept Admiral Vex awake at night. According to the intelligence files, humans had thousands of ships. So why did they keep sending single vessels on peaceful missions? "Maybe they're testing us," suggested Admiral Kex of the Altarian Defense Force. seeing how we react to their presence. Or maybe, General Cross growled, they're laughing at us. Showing us how little they fear our fleets. The communication officer called for Admiral Vex's attention. Sir, the human ship is approaching our position. On the main screen, the Liberty's Edge appeared. It looked exactly the same as before, a simple gray ship that seemed unremarkable compared to the massive fleet surrounding it. But Admiral Vex now knew that appearances could be very deceiving. Open a channel, he ordered. Captain Morrison's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm and relaxed, as if approaching a fleet of 500 warships was a normal part of his day. Admiral Vex, Captain Morrison said politely. I see you've assembled quite a gathering. Is there some kind of celebration happening? Admiral Vex felt insulted by the human's casual tone. Captain Morrison, you are surrounded by the combined fleets of 12 species. The most powerful military force ever assembled. I suggest you take this seriously. I am taking it seriously, Admiral. That's why I'm wondering why you felt the need for such a large fleet. Is there some threat in this area we should know about? The question caught Admiral Vex off guard. Was Captain Morrison being sarcastic, or did he genuinely not understand that the fleet was meant to intimidate him? Captain, this fleet is here because of you. Because of your people. We know what you really are. I'm not sure what you mean, Admiral. We're explorers on a peaceful mission. General Cross couldn't contain himself any longer. His red face appeared on a secondary screen. Enough games, human. We know about your technology. We know about your weapons. We know you've been spying on us for decades. Captain Morrison's expression didn't change. General, I think there may be some misunderstanding. We've been exploring this region of space, yes. But we've never spied on anyone or threatened anyone. Then explain your ship's impossible speed, Admiral Vex demanded. Our engines are efficient, Admiral. We've worked hard to develop clean, fast propulsion systems. And your population of 8 billion people? How does a young spacefaring race support so many beings? We've been around longer than you might think, Admiral. We just haven't traveled very far until recently. Admiral Vex realized that Captain Morrison was still being evasive. The human was answering questions without really answering them. It was frustrating and somehow more frightening than open hostility. Captain Morrison, Admiral Vex said slowly, I'm going to be direct. Our intelligence suggests that your people have fought wars for centuries. That you have weapons and technology far beyond ours. That you could destroy this entire fleet if you chose to. For the first time, Captain Morrison's expression changed slightly. He looked thoughtful, as if considering how to respond. Admiral, that's quite a lot of assumptions. May I ask what you want from us? We want the truth. We want to know if you're a threat to the peaceful species of this galaxy. Captain Morrison was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was more serious than before. Admiral, let me ask you a question. If my people were as dangerous as you think, would we send single ships on peaceful missions? Would we trade stories and share meals with your ambassadors? Would we ask politely for permission to pass through your space? I don't know, Admiral Vex admitted. That's what concerns us. Admiral, our species learned something during our long history. We learned that war is expensive and destructive. We learned that it's better to make friends than enemies. We learned that the galaxy is big enough for everyone. But you could fight if you had to. Captain Morrison smiled slightly. Admiral, couldn't you? The simple question hung in the air. Of course the Zephyrians could fight. Every species could fight if necessary. But Captain Morrison had turned the question around, making Admiral Vex think about his own assumptions. The difference, General Cross interrupted, is that we're honest about our military capabilities. You're hiding yours. Are we hiding them, General? Or are you just seeing what you expect to see? Before General Cross could respond, the Liberty's Edge was joined by another ship. This new vessel appeared without any warning, simply materializing out of empty space like it had always been there. The alien crews panicked. Alarms rang throughout the fleet as 500 ships tried to understand how a second ship had appeared without being detected by any of their sensors. New contact. Admiral Vex tactical officer shouted. Unknown vessel, same design as the first one. On the main screen, Captain Morrison's face was replaced by the image of a woman in a similar blue uniform. She had gray hair and the calm confidence of someone accustomed to command. "This is Ambassador Kate Phillips of the Seoul Diplomatic Corps," she said. "I apologize for arriving unannounced, but we detected a large fleet buildup in this area and wanted to investigate." Admiral Vex stared at the woman. "How did you get here without being detected?" "Oh, we've been here for several hours, Admiral. We wanted to observe the situation before making contact." "Several hours?" General Cross's voice was full of rage. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected you." "Would they?" Ambassador Phillips asked mildly. "Perhaps your sensors aren't as good as you think they are." The awful truth was sinking in. If humans could hide their ships from the most advanced sensor systems in the galaxy, if they could appear and disappear at will, then the massive fleet surrounding them was useless. "Ambassador Phillips," Admiral Vex said carefully, "why did Earth send you here?" "Because Captain Morrison reported that you had assembled a large fleet. My government was concerned that there might be some misunderstanding about our intentions." "Your government was monitoring our communications?" "Of course not, Admiral. That would be rude. Captain Morrison simply reported that you seemed worried about something." Admiral Vex looked around at his fleet. 500 ships, the pride of 12 civilizations, and apparently they had been watched and analyzed without even knowing it. "Ambassador, I'll ask you the same question I asked Captain Morrison. Are humans a threat to the peaceful species of this galaxy?" "Admiral, humans prefer peace to war. We've learned that cooperation is more profitable than conquest." But what? "But we also learned to be prepared for anything. The galaxy can be a dangerous place." As if to demonstrate her point, Ambassador Phillips gestured toward the view screen. "For example, Admiral, you've assembled 500 warships to intimidate a single exploration vessel. Some people might consider that aggressive behavior." Admiral Vex realized the terrible irony of the situation. He had gathered this massive fleet to show humans that they couldn't be pushed around. Instead, he had demonstrated exactly why humans might need to be prepared for danger. "What do you want from us?" he asked finally. "The same thing we've always wanted, Admiral. Peaceful relations, fair trade, and mutual respect. The galaxy is big enough for all of us." As Ambassador Phillips spoke, Admiral Vex noticed something in the background of her transmission. Through the viewports of her ship, he could see stars and space. But he also saw other shapes moving in the darkness. Other ships. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "how many ships did Earth send to this meeting?" "Just enough, Admiral. Just enough." The silence that followed Ambassador Phillips' words was the loudest thing Admiral Vex had ever heard. Around him, his bridge crew stared at their screens in shock. Through the viewports of the human ship, they could now see what had been hidden before, dozens of other vessels moving like ghosts in the darkness. "Admiral," his sensor operator whispered, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures all around us. Ships are decloaking everywhere." One by one, human vessels began to appear throughout the area. They didn't dramatically materialize like in the stories. Instead, they simply became visible, as if someone had turned off a switch that had been hiding them. Within minutes, the space around the galactic fleet was filled with human ships. Admiral Vex tried to count them, but there were too many. 50 ships. 100 ships. More ships kept appearing until the human fleet was larger than the galactic coalition that had come to intimidate them. "How long have they been there?" General Cross's voice cracked with disbelief. "Unknown, sir," the sensor operator replied. "Our instruments show they've been in position for at least 6 hours. Maybe longer." 6 hours. The human fleet had been watching and waiting while 500 alien ships gathered to confront a single exploration vessel. They had probably been analyzing every ship, every weapon, every weakness in the galactic formation. Ambassador Phillips continued speaking as if nothing unusual had happened. Admiral Vex, I hope you understand that we didn't come here to threaten anyone. When our monitoring stations detected your fleet buildup, we were concerned that there might be some misunderstanding. Monitoring stations? Admiral Vex asked weakly. Oh yes, we have several observation posts in this region. Purely for scientific research, of course. We've been studying galactic civilizations for quite some time. Admiral Vex realized that everything they thought they knew was wrong. Humans hadn't been hiding their capabilities, they had been studying everyone else while remaining invisible. They knew everything about galactic military forces, technology, and politics. The aliens knew almost nothing about humans. Ambassador, he said carefully, exactly how long have your people been watching us? That's a complicated question, Admiral. Our first deep space probes reached this region about 150 years ago. Our first crewed missions began about 90 years ago. We established permanent observation posts about 60 years ago. And in all that time, you never made contact? We were learning, Admiral. Understanding your cultures, your languages, your conflicts. We wanted to be sure we approached first contact correctly. Captain Morrison's face appeared on a second screen. Admiral, I hope you understand why we had to be careful. Some species in the galaxy are quite aggressive. We needed to know who we could trust. And now you know. We're getting a better picture, yes. General Cross finally found his voice. How many ships do you have? Enough, Ambassador Phillips replied simply. That's not an answer. General, would you tell a potential enemy exactly how many ships you have? The question hit General Cross like a physical blow. The humans were treating the galactic fleet as a potential threat, not as the legitimate authority in this region of space. We're not enemies, Admiral Vex said quickly. We're just concerned about our security. Of course you are, Admiral. That's why you assembled 500 warships to meet one exploration vessel. The sarcasm in Ambassador Phillips' voice was gentle but unmistakable. Admiral Vex felt embarrassed and foolish. His show of force had achieved the opposite of what he intended. What do you want from us? He asked again. Admiral, Earth would like to establish formal diplomatic relations with all interested species. We'd like to set up trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. Mutual defense? General Cross laughed bitterly. What could we possibly defend you against? Pirates, for one thing. Rogue states. Natural disasters. The galaxy has many dangers, General. Even we can't be everywhere at once. Ambassador Phillips paused and looked directly at General Cross. Besides, General, strength isn't just about weapons. You have resources we need. Knowledge we lack. Perspectives we've never considered. True strength comes from cooperation. Admiral Vex looked around at his fleet. 500 ships that had seemed so powerful an hour ago now looked pitiful compared to the human forces surrounding them. But Ambassador Phillips was offering partnership, not conquest. What would these agreements involve? He asked. Standard diplomatic protocols, Admiral. Trade relations, territorial agreements, joint scientific missions. Nothing threatening. And if we refuse? Then we'll respect your decision and continue our peaceful exploration elsewhere. The simple answer was somehow more frightening than any threat. If humans could appear and disappear at will, if they could monitor galactic communications without being detected, then they didn't need to conquer anyone. They could simply ignore the established powers and do whatever they wanted. Admiral, Commander Thek's voice came through on a private channel, I'm detecting incredible energy readings from their ships. Their smallest vessels have more firepower than our largest dreadnoughts. Admiral Vex closed his eyes. The galactic balance of power hadn't just shifted, it had been completely overturned. Humans weren't asking for permission to be a major power. They already were one. Ambassador Phillips, he said slowly, I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. These things happen, Admiral. First contact is always complicated. What would you suggest as a next step? Well, Captain Morrison was planning to visit several more star systems on his exploration mission. Perhaps some of your diplomats could accompany him. Get to know us better. The idea of sending diplomats on a human ship terrified Admiral Vex. But it also made sense. If humans were going to be a galactic power, it was better to understand them than to fight them. I'll consider your proposal, he said. Excellent. In the meantime, perhaps your fleet could return to normal duties. This much firepower in one place makes everyone nervous. Admiral Vex looked at the human ships surrounding his fleet. Each one probably had enough firepower to destroy his entire force. The humans were politely asking him to leave. Of course, Ambassador. We'll begin dispersing immediately. As orders went out for the galactic fleet to break formation and return to their home systems, Admiral Vex remained on his bridge, thinking about what had just happened. He had assembled the largest military force in galactic history to intimidate a single human ship. Instead, he had learned that humans could deploy fleets that made his forces look like toys. But the most frightening thing wasn't their military power. It was their confidence. Humans acted like they had nothing to fear from anyone. They sent single ships on peaceful missions through hostile territory. They revealed themselves only when necessary. They offered partnership instead of demanding submission. They acted like a species that had already won every war that mattered. Sir, Commander Thek said quietly, the human ships are withdrawing. They're just disappearing again. Admiral Vex watched as the human fleet faded from view like it had never existed. Only the Liberty's Edge and Ambassador Phillips' diplomatic vessel remained visible. Admiral, Ambassador Phillips said, thank you for your time today. We look forward to future cooperation. Ambassador, may I ask you one final question? Of course. Why did you reveal your ships today? You could have remained hidden. Ambassador Phillips smiled. Admiral, you assembled 500 ships to intimidate Captain Morrison. We wanted you to understand that intimidation works both ways. But we also wanted you to know that we prefer cooperation to intimidation. As the human diplomatic ship prepared to leave, Admiral Vex finally understood why everyone had been panicking about just one human ship. It wasn't the ship itself that was frightening. It was what that single ship represented. A species so confident in their power that they could afford to explore the galaxy alone. A civilization so advanced that they had been watching everyone else for over a century without being detected. A people so experienced in warfare that they had chosen peace instead. The Liberty's Edge wasn't just an exploration vessel. It was a statement. A quiet declaration that humans had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were here to stay. Captain Morrison's final transmission was brief and polite. Admiral Vex, thank you for your hospitality. We'll continue our mission now. Perhaps we'll meet again under better circumstances. As the two human ships departed, leaving behind a fleet of 500 ships that felt suddenly small and vulnerable, Admiral Vex finally had his answer to the question that had started it all. Just one human ship. Everyone was panicking because that one ship represented everything they didn't know about the most powerful species in the galaxy. And now they were going to have to learn to live with them.